The floor is now open for questions for all three.
Inuit, the ICC is very concerned about Inuit and Indigenous perspectives being included in policy and the decision making. And I just wanted to know if you could give me an example, and I'm thinking specifically of the hunters, how the hunters are affected in being able to make a living when they're not included, when that perspective is not included by the decision makers and policy makers.
I think it's all about politics right now. We're dealing with a lot of decisions are made in DC that will greatly impact us. Right now we're dealing with the ivory ban, which is trying to address the elephant ivory poaching. Our hunters are concerned about that because that ban includes walrus ivory, which is a big economic resource for our communities. That's how many of our artists and craftsmen make their living out of, is making beautiful arts and crafts. But ICC is also concerned about having our indigenous knowledge be recognized and included in many of the discussions. And I think I can give an example of how a hunter's knowledge of working with science helps. Is two of our hunters were involved in tagging walrus research in the vessel, and the vessel was stuck in ice and they couldn't find walrus, but our hunters said, well, let's stop the engines and listen to the sound. And the scientists turned off the engine, and the hunters said, well, if you listen, we will find the walrus in this fog. They traverse through the waters in this foggy condition, and they found the walrus, including use of smell, because walrus has a distinct odor when there's a lot of them out on ice. And I think those types of specialized knowledge will greatly enhance science work when two are combined. And I think that's where ICC is trying to advocate to make sure that indigenous knowledge is recognized and appreciated and included in any of the research activities, and would actually benefit us too.
Let's just take 2-3 more questions and then let them answer as a package, because otherwise I don't think we will get far. So I have one here. Yeah.
Yes, I think this is for Dr. Corell mostly, but I think it's quite clear that our CO2 emissions are going up too much. But what can we do to reduce them? And does it matter on an individual level, or does it just need to change on a political legislation level? And in that, does it even matter what the US does as a whole, or is it really only what China does?
So just keep the question. Let's take 1 or 2 more. There was one over there.
Thank you for the talk. I have a question for Alf, which is you've explained to us the implications of fisheries development in the Central Arctic Ocean. I'm interested a bit more about how does that relate to oil and gas interests as well as shipping interests, and in particular, what's Russia's perspective in comparison to the rest of the circumpolar states? Because I've always had the impression that
you get that one.
The Russians have had this manifest destiny in the Arctic.
He wants to know the conflict between fishing.
Okay, I think the question has been asked. There is one right here in the front.
So my name is Svein Mathisen, and I'm working for the International Center for Reindeer Husbandry in Kautokeino in Norway. We are working in the circumpolar north, and this is a comment to Vera. Thank you for a very nice presentation today. But reindeer husbandry is maybe the best example. If you don't include traditional knowledge in the modern management, it goes to zero, one way or another. The economy is getting bad. You're not able to adapt to the climate change if you're not including traditional knowledge. That's the Norwegian story. That's how Norway used its oil money to make a modern management of reindeer husbandry, Sami reindeer husbandry. It didn't include the reindeer husbandry, and people are left in a very tricky situation. Okay, what's happened to Alaska? maybe the largest research grants ever to reindeer and reindeer husbandry was given to the research university in Alaska. And nothing is left. There's no reindeer left. Because there was no focus on traditional knowledge in the science development. Traditional knowledge is going to and have to be an important part of the development of the communities in the circumpolar north. And we have to work together. The US, Norway, Alaska, Northern Norway, we have to work together and make a common program. Thank you.
Okay, so I think what we will do, or try to do, is pick up the questions as you see them relate to yourself, but as you are answering them, it would be good to also try and fold in some of your ideas about what kind of action do you envision will or should happen to address some of these issues that have been questioned here. So let's start with Bob, and then we move over here.
There are two themes I wanted to pick up on this. The first has to do with some things Wainwright and Vera raised. There's more than just bringing traditional knowledge to the table. One of the great philosophers of Norway, in my view, is Nils Askell, and he raises the following question. Let's assume that we do bring all those ideas to the table, but you know what? We always resolve the matter in a Western culture court or a Western culture philosophy. And if you look back, these folks have been living in these regions for, well, in northern Norway, probably 6,000 to 7,000 years. So there's a dilemma about how it is you negotiate a solution, even if you get it there. Second of all, has to do with your question. We completed a pretty careful look at this issue of energy a couple of years ago, worldwide assessment. And step one, if we got really smart, we could reduce our emissions by 40% by more efficiently using our energy. That's a big deal. Secondly, Peter raised ways that we can begin to think about doing this transition. I can put it fairly simply. Right today, we as a global world put about $1.5 trillion every year into building new fossil fuel capacity. So we have the money. If we started moving that over, the picture I just showed you is solvable. So we have a decision to make, and so it's a decision to be made in the political, cultural, and quite frankly, socioeconomic communities that have to participate in these matters. Thank you.
Okay, Alf?
Let me pick up on the same issue, the question of traditional knowledge and how to engage traditional knowledge with modern Western scientific knowledge. My perception is that we have a very good development in that respect over the last years. For example, the agreement under negotiation I spoke about has specific provisions about that. The international agreement on scientific cooperation in the Arctic, negotiated in the Arctic Council, will be signed at the ministerial in May, also contain language specifically about traditional knowledge and how to work that together with scientific knowledge. So I think there is a positive development in that regard. When it comes to the question of how to sort of reconcile the concerns of different industries, be it petroleum, fisheries, shipping, those are essentially a question of competing uses and competition for space. And the broad answer to it is marine spatial planning. The thing I spoke about is sort of way beyond that. It's in the Central Arctic Ocean. It's a future thing. It's a non-existing problem in that area. But if you go to the subarctic, it's very much a question that is addressed every day in the Arctic countries. And in Norway, the broad answer to it has been marine spatial planning in the format of marine management plans, where you, for example, put certain limits to where petroleum activity can take place and when it can take place.
Okay, last word for Vera.
Well, I think we always try to encourage the researchers and scientists to coordinate, communicate, consult with our communities, which, especially on issues or projects that would have an impact on our people in our communities. So those are the recommendations that we always propose to outsiders.
So I would like to thank all three speakers and panelists, and then we will move on to the final segment.